We welcome you back to the second half of our first class on streaming particles of living intelligence. I hope that title has some sort of grab to it for people, and you can see how deep it can go. We can pretty much looking at in terms of the Shakti of Lord Shiva, or the dynamic power, the wriggling power in the snake that sometimes is still and other times moves. It's the same snake, but it has these two modes. So Sri Ramakrishna would often describe this first compound off of Brahman, as we saw it defined by Swami Vivekananda, as these streaming particles. And they're consisting of pure intelligence, not stunted intelligence or intelligence that's worldly or earthly or only explanative of secular subjects, but goes much deeper than that and is possessed by a whole host of enlightened souls that we can count. In India, lose track on 10 fingers, and you go much deeper throughout time. These great souls, and other religions too, they come and they go without actually coming and going. There's this stationary consciousness that has its ability, like a snake, to either be still and quiet or to move. And both of those are in the same reality, the static and the dynamic, Sri Ramakrishna used to call it. Or you could say Purusha and Prakriti, or Brahman and Shakti, or Shiva and Shakti. It seems like all the Indian darshanas have this divine couple associated in the background. Radha and Krishna, and Sita and Ram, and Muhammad and Fatima, if you want to put it into the Muslim perspective. So we're focusing in then on something that moves, apparently so, and shines, obviously so, when it's put in context to the darkness of ignorance particularly. So that's why yogis meditate in dark mountain caves. I'm quoting a song right now. The yogis meditate in dark mountain caves where their senses are completely deprived of light, because when she appears there in her third eye or in their heart, there will be no other competing light to dim the brilliance of her vision. So they sit for a long time and nothing, they're not going to mistake anything for that light that comes forward from within them. And it can be Brahma Kala. It can either be Brahman or it can be Kali. It's formless. It has form, but then it has both. Brahma Kala. It's formless form. Remember our founder Lexicon talking about that. It's probably a good way to express deities like Ishvara, like these avatars that we saw, these higher or highest of all luminaries. Or she herself, how she will peek into the hearts and minds of all living beings on all 7 plateaus of this 7-storied castle of the chakras, and look in without being seen. And she does that through these well-lit particles, like she has certain flashlights that she can shine here and that, and see everything that's going on. As the scriptures say, everything from Lord Brahma to a blade of grass, she knows the movements of. So anyway, welcome back to that loka that we're in right now. And in our second half, which will just consist of a little less than an hour, and we'll hopefully give the first airing ever of these 2 charts that I made specifically for this chart, this streaming particles of living intelligence, that we will go back to and look at bijams, particularly with the Mala chart, because that's another very excellent way to go with her streaming particles. And this chart that we're having to face off with this word Vishmriti, when it would be very nice if we could just have Daivashmriti, you see, divine knowledge. And I have another new chart which I'll show you. It's called the watermill of spiritual progression. and how to pay actions forward into your next lifetime. And instead of falling victim to karmas, continuing rotating on the wheel of samsara, there's a way of using your prarabdha karma. In fact, I'm just writing a God blog on that. This prarabdha karma as a potter's wheel. I mean, which wheel do you want to be on, the potter's wheel or the samsaric wheel? As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the potter's wheel, you end up with the potter's touch, perfection, and then you rotate a while. That's leftover karma from this lifetime. That's not going to give rise to what they call agami karma anymore. You won't have a future lifetime because you made sure to cut the karma that produces future lifetimes out of the picture in this lifetime. Somebody got a megaphone? So I can repeat that? So all the power is with you now, but all the power of potential is behind you, and some of that potential in many souls is of a mixed variety. It's one of the most puzzling, confusing kinds of karma, is mixed karma. There's black, there's white, we know the difference, but there's gray, and that's a real problem for people. Not knowing the difference between good and bad is just the beginning of that on the moral level. But not to know the difference between the real and the unreal, that's a much deeper problem that accosts people who are spiritual practitioners. The admixture of the worlds, and where you have a possibility of taking something unreal and considering it to be real. And that's what we just looked at here in this curtain of nescience, kind of, that's standing between the higher worlds and the lower worlds. It's a curtain of nescience is what you come through every time and go back through when you leave and take new bodies inside the three worlds. So, solution overall, I mean, there are many practices, sadhanas and various things we've talked about, how to outstrip Maya, how to pierce through it, how to transcend it, how to not study it up close, and different yogas that we've studied about and everything, but this is kind of more towards the Advaitic level of Shakta Advaitavada, where you have the Divine Mother and Advaita put together, which is a very great advantage to souls who arrive there. And they've been given the new dispensation after they got Vivekananda's Neo-Vedanta. That's the name of our retreat coming up, right? In July 4th, over the July 4th here. Come to our retreat and we'll find out about Vivekananda's Neo-Vedanta and Sri Ramakrishna's new dispensation, how that all works together. So to connect this to the Vakdevi, the Divine Mother, I've already sang you a few songs about that are very apropos to the explaining the teaching. But we want to look at not just interpersonal causes, but causes that are cosmic too, because there's a collective mind there, and our ancestors certainly represent a cross-section of that. But I've often said, you know, animals are looking to humans, and humans are looking to ancestors, and ancestors are looking to demigods, you might call them. And demigods are looking to the gods, and the gods are looking to Indra. Indra's looking to the Trinity, and Trinity is looking toward the Word. And all of that being shot through and through by these living particles, these streaming particles of living intelligence. If you become aware of them, you can utilize them to penetrate everything, as the teaching said. So let's look then, with that little quick introduction to second half of this class, at the cosmic and collective causes that get in the way of people not being able to penetrate that curtain of nescience. The curtain of nescience probably could be seen as a thicker toward the earth realm, thinner towards Burloka, Swarloka towards Bhuvarloka, a little thinner towards Burloka, and then when it reaches Janaloka and Maharloka and Taparloka, just begins to thin out. By the time you're at Maharloka, you've transcended the need to be reborn again. So it's sort of like you waking up from a dream. You just forget it. It didn't have any significance to you. And you are who you are. You're one and indivisible. You're satisfied in that state, and you're self-assured. And you have the greatest being that ever existed behind you, the Divine Mother of the universe. Even God cannot hurt her children. I'm quoting Divine Mother, Sri Sarada Devi. Even God can do no harm to my children. So maybe she met the gods. Whatever the case, she's fierce when she takes this form, Kali. This form that we showed very subtly behind everything. But she can also come forth as Lajapata Vritti Nicham Sharada Jnana Dayate, that modest, humble, withdrawing village woman that covers herself like a village cat covers itself in ashes to conceal its true colors. That's how Sri Ramakrishna talked about her, who's our Paramadeva, my Paramadeva. So Swami Shishananda, peace and bliss be upon him, meditated upon her his whole life here in the West. She passed away, he came west. He said, I came west, how did I contact her again? I lost her in form, and then the first city of Tripura, I lost it, you know. He said, I contacted her in my heart with the mantra she gave me. Now I'd like to show you that, he said. So he was living in a state of divine communion with Holy Mother all the time. Sometimes we'd see him consult her. I mean, you'd ask him a question, he'd go away, come back with the answer. He wasn't answering out of his own knowledge. And other times you'd see him smile, and people would weep when they saw this otherwise kind of grouchy, crotchety old senior monk who usually liked to scold you rather than welcome you, all of a sudden break into a smile. That's why they kept a box of Kleenex in the private meeting room. People would go in, I'm going to ask him this question, that question, box of Kleenex. What's this about? You'll see. As he would smile at you. I mean, out in front, everyone, he scolded you if you had it coming. Sometimes even if you didn't have it coming, because that would burn away karmas. So anyway, that's kind of my description of this watermill of paying karmas forward. There's a good part of that we don't accent enough. So I wanted to show you the system around that and how prarabdha karma should be used as a very positive thing. That's one of the other new charts we'll get to. I think I'll give you a quick look at it, if I even brought it. Yeah. The water wheel there. Yeah. And the prarabdha karma that's collecting, coming back from sanchita karma, all the way back to the open sky of Brahman and so forth. When I see a watermill, I think spirituality. When I see anything, I think spirituality. What can that say? What does that mean? And how can it be communicated there? And 352 charts later, which is the number on this one, I think. 350, 349, 352 back here you just saw. So that's how I want to take everything in this world and show her behind it. See? And give you that kind of assurance that I've gotten over 50 years of diving deep into it and receiving it from several great teachers, not just my gurus, but other great souls who I talk to. They're always there in that transmission. They're always there in that particle. You know, it's not like, what is it? Dull sleep, vacuous thought, empty speech, worldly sounds. That's what you get when you go everywhere else. Neighborhoods, lounges, colleges probably. You know, people are spending their extra time doing those things. But when you go in front of those souls, you're in a stream of particle immediately. And nothing can penetrate that. I'll show you that when we revisit the Jnana Matra itself, because We probably should. So it started it all off, me thinking, well, if there is a intelligent particle, what's in it? We know it's in an atom, neutrons, protons, quarks, subatomic particles, so forth, so on. So there must be something in that that makes it so powerful. So let's just put it forward like that. Show them what it is, because you get a stream of these, and it contains all that. You've got a power called Divine Mother. That's why it can penetrate everything. That's why it's impermeable. And that's why it's eternal. And that's why it's the essence of wisdom. And all those reasons I put down there in that chart. I'm getting more back into the preamble, but let's look at causes which are in the mind of collective beings, which I just listed. Animals looking to humans, looking to ancestors, looking to demigods, looking to gods, because these are describing the beings of the 7 lokas. 3 below, 3 above, 1 in the middle. If you can reach the one in the middle, no more birth and death for me, only emanation from my Divine Mother. What's he talking about? Streaming particles of living intelligence. No more birth in the womb of matter for me, only emanation from my Divine Mother. Precisely what he's talking about is that he got aboard the train, the ship, the vehicle, the vahana, headed towards ultimate reality, and the game was over from then on. The game was over. It's like Sri Ramakrishna saying, open sailing 10 miles offshore. 5 miles offshore, there's a hurricane. You may be fecked there. But further on, then you've got free sailing, open sailing. So that's what it is when you take refuge in the Divine Mother of the Universe. O Mother of the Universe, I take refuge at thy feet. Bless us with pure love, pure knowledge. You take a vow to her. I signed a document to her in gold ink that my teacher gave me. Sign this. It was on Durga Puja. I signed willingly. I've received the gift of I've sold everything away in the conventional marketplace of the world. I've sold it all away. Instead, received the mantra of the Divine Mother, Durga, Durga, Durga. Now I've tied her to a tuft of my hair, so she's always on my mind. That's another song in India. So, yeah, sign your life away. They want you to sign it away to every other thing, don't they? They want you to give yourself to unreal things. Here, take this vaccine. See, it's a part of my cause. And do they really care about you? They say they do, but who really cares about you is the question. That Divine Mother of the Universe cares for all her precious spiritual children, but she doesn't care for the asuras. Mother Cat has her claws out and she plays with the mouse, but when she plays with her kitten, she retracts her claws. And she covers her fangs with her lips. That's how she plays with her devotees, but the others, the egos, they don't receive that treatment. So read in the Gita to find out about the difference between the divine and the demoniacal, how they get treated, and whose fault is that happens. Open yourself entirely, surrender yourself 100%, or 120%, like Sri Ramakrishna did, to the Divine Mother of the Universe, if you want your highest and best good, and the highest and best good of those around you. So, cosmic and collective causes, vivarta, be the first thing. False superimposition of name and form, time and space, and karma and maya over Brahman. Like, I'm about ready to write the Officer Pond Scum God block, you see. So basically, green scum covers the lake, you push it away, it comes dancing back. It's not the green scum's fault, it's its nature to dance back, and that's Maya. But it's your ability to push it away that gives you the best view of yourself. So that's what we mean by Vivarta in Vedanta. It's one of the classic teachings of Vedanta. Just like gunas, you will find them in Samkhya and Yoga, but those three are like, I can't cross three fingers, but they're like that. So in the same way, you've got this very specialized teaching there in Vedanta that relates to that. Vivarta, false superimposition of name and form over reality. It's natural. In our tradition, it's not like a devil out to get you. That's ridiculous superstition. It's if there's any devil at all, it's in you. So be rid of it and realize your true self. Vivekananda Calendar said to me yesterday, I think I flipped it, as he has said, in my case, I cannot think of myself as being weak. That's the worst sin. I could never think of myself as being weak. Strength, boldness, weakness is the worst sin. So you would stand up for that kind of fearlessness. Well, here's fear coming forward now. Bhaya is fear of formlessness. It's one of the subtle things. You can see how we're talking different levels of thickness of nescience, right? These are pretty thick, earth plane kind of stuff. Strip your mind of its memories as you pass through it. And you're a willing party to that. Oh, go ahead, take it. I'll just be vacuous. See? I'll come to earth and make a practice out of dull sleep, vacuous thought, empty speech, and worldly music. Because I allowed the curtain of nescience to strip all my intelligence away from me. Instead of passing away from the body consciously with dharma instead of adharma as my possession, and coming back through it with dharma, like great souls do, by the thousands here on earth. I think Tibetan monks and Hindu swamis and Sufi sheikhs and so forth are not coming through with this knowledge and recovering it right away. Go talk to them. Apprentice them if you can. Samshaya, doubt in the nature of the self, is there. Samshaya rakshasha, the words in a song come to my song, that is, I could sing it. It's in a Chandala by Swami Vivekananda, a beautiful hymn. Doubt in the nature of the self, that has to go. So you're probably saying right now, well, you've got fear and doubt there, and those are always the last things to go. So that's why they're put at the cosmic and collective level. That will strip you of your self-assurance. You need the courage of your convictions. It's one of my favorite English sayings in that regard. Get the courage of your convictions and shore them up with a power. Here's your power. One Swami told me in a crowd once. Didn't even know him, never saw him again. Saw him for 10 seconds. Here's your power, Babaji. Handed me a picture of Sri Ramakrishna in the middle of a crowd of like 10,000 people at the Kalpataru day at Kastipur Garden. Here's your power. So fear of formlessness is bhaya. Yes, is bhaya. But I mean, abhaya means that basically you don't have that fear of formlessness. This is a collective problem in minds of humanity. Samshaya, doubt in the nature of the self. Parinama, belief in changes and transformation. So that's one of the big problems, basically, is that in Western science and Westerners, they're looking for change to happen. If change doesn't happen, they're suspicious about things. But for the Indian Rishi, if change does happen, they're suspicious of it. Because they've learned that Brahman is changeless. And it's the only thing that is changeless. That's why it's the only reality. Because their barometer, their rule of thumb, is basically that Brahman is changeless. Brahman is real, all else is unreal. Which goes back to Vivarta, doesn't it? So now you're beginning to consider and hopefully contemplate and do your manana on change and changefulness, higher dualities, fear and fearlessness, and so forth. And there's that belief in birth, life, and death, which actually I mentioned about Patanjali saying, one of the problems of human beings coming through this curtain of nescience at all is because they're attached to the prana and to more bodies. You have to go back and connect them then to these and see how that follows forth. They're paying forward the wrong kinds of things based on conditionings. But if you have a positive change of mind, then you can look for everything that's positive and replace the negative with the positive. That is, the klista vrittis will go away, your doubts, your fears, and the aklista vrittis will take their place. And yes, I did bring that chart that we were going to look at. I think I brought it somewhere because I thought it would be interesting. We didn't get to see it at our recent retreat. We didn't get to go through it much at the yoga retreat, but there's the difference between klista vrittis and aklista vrittis. So we might look at that next week. Sukha is there, so I split sukha and dukkha. In a more ultimate sense, dukkha is down there, belief in suffering being real. Where Lord Buddha put that forth as the first noble truth. There is suffering, but he didn't say it's real. Like darkness in a cave. With a bring in a torch, it goes away. So you have to take that positive look at things, that suffering can be transcended, and it can even be used for higher purposes. Whereas you might say sukha could be a little bit more difficult to transcend, desire for heavenly existence. That would be an interesting study to find out what makes an angelic being or a celestial soul or a being occupying the third world decide to come and take rebirth. Because for many souls it's not a decision they make. They're pulled like a mongoose with a brick on its tail down from that brief sojourn in heaven, smack dab into the physical body with poor upbringing, bad families, all of that which you see around a lot, and a lot of suffering and karma to pay for it. But if a soul decides to take a birth on earth, a soul of a higher consciousness, then the dynamics around that make a good study. You might call world awareness one of those. That's mentioned in the scriptures. World awareness means you're probably getting tired of all bodies and all worlds. You just want to rest. And where's the best place to rest is the question then. Where will my rest be unbroken? Not just rest in the peace of heaven, like after death, carved on your gravestone. But you probably want it to be, on your gravestone, been here once, never coming back. That would be a nice thing to carve there. See? Put that on my gravestone if you ever have a chance to. Came once, never again. You can sparse words. If it's a small gravestone, you're only spending $100 on me. And finally, Pitriloka, influence of the ancestors. It's a really dense part of collective curtain of nescience. Penetrate through that's very difficult. You'd have to sharpen your intellect like a goad, the Shvetashvatara Upanishad says, to be able to, goad is both sharp and thick, so it's not going to break when you push. So, your own intellect informed by her intelligence would be that goad. of course, any good Dharma teacher who's presenting something like this, especially in a new way with a word like Vismriti, the dire effects of this, pointing out a whole age, probably maybe two, Dvapara Yuga to Kali Yuga, this is what people have been suffering from so much. Satya Yuga and Treta Yuga, probably not so much. Maybe visit to earth in a body was more of just a sojourn there. And maybe to eat some of the good food on earth. You see, oh, I heard earth has good food. I want to try it. So you embody down there and go get yourself some good vegetarian food, which is what the devotees would probably do. But otherwise, not much would be there to bring them back because they're consuming the nectar of non-dual truth. That's a diet that's incomparable in all the worlds. But anyway, any teacher who's presenting a teaching like this, because you can, I've found, like samskara or karma, or you can pick a word in Sanskrit and just say it. That's the power of that word that has her intelligence in it. That will then burgeon from there. It's just like put it into the stream of collective consciousness, put it there and watch it grow. Start to eat like acid through that stone-like barrier of ignorance that's they've got themselves wrapped in. And in that way, a word like Vismriti would be a great cautionary teaching, if not an outright warning. This is what's happening to you. And it's happening to you as you live and as you approach death. Because you think they're both, birth, life, and death are real, and you haven't been given the higher teaching of transcendence, and that the soul's eternal, and that thou art that. And there are really quick ways, even faster than the teaching on Smriti or teaching on Vakdevi, even faster ways in the Advaita to realize yourself. If you're qualified for them, prepared for them, and ready to hear them, and if you're teetering on the verge of enlightenment already, and are free of these concomitants of the curtain of nescience, the cloud of unknowing that takes over people, like being born in the mother's womb. My karmas attacked me from past lifetimes. The first line of a Shiva hymn. When I first saw the light of this earth, my karmas attacked me while I was lying for 8 months in my mother's womb. Then I came out, mosquitoes and flies attacked me. It goes on like that. I wonder if I want to take birth again. And certainly, hopefully with, as Vivekananda said, with pure consciousness. So if we want to give ourselves a teaching that consists of solutions to these problems, which are of individual, collective, and cosmic proportions. They call that Vyasti and Samasti. See, so, and I've add another one, Vyapi, would be like the third, the cosmic area, because it's more all-pervasive. Then you would want to go to these kinds of thoughts filled with her Vakdevi Tattva. So these are practices to reclaim divine memory. And maybe if it's too little too late for brains that have already contracted it, and in the physical level, with healers that don't know how to deal with it and kind of shooting in the dark, fishing around kind of thing. And then you just have to make them comfortable. I'd say, their prarabdha karmas, it would be good to keep them near love and compassion. Would be the best thing you could do for them. But for physical mechanisms like the brain, if it's damaged, then there's not a lot you're going to be able to do, even in the case of young children who have that, which we're working with ourselves. So here's some practices to reclaim your divine memory while you're good, healthy, young, able, open, and warned about the problems of loss of memory as you age, your brain as opposed to your mind, or contrasted to your mind. Live more in your mind when you purify it. So expand the mind to know Brahman. It's in the peace chants. Apiyantu mamangani vak pranaschakshu shotramatra balamindriyani cha sarvani. I'll never forget that line. It just says everything. Body, senses, mind, indriyas, your senses, balamindriyani, all your senses. Expand them all to know Brahman. You don't expand them for any other reason, because that leads to forgetfulness of God. So expand your mind's capacity to know Brahman. Consciousness does not expand. That was one of the problems we had in the 60s, you see. These spurious teachers were coming from India and from other places and saying, oh, expand your mind, expand your consciousness, you see. But we hadn't heard yet that consciousness doesn't expand. Brahman doesn't expand or contract. If it does that, it's all in show via its Maya, Vedanta would tell you. So what's expanding and contracting? It's the mind. So let's try and expand it in the light of Brahman. Where's the light of Brahman? Streaming particles coming off the word turning into other words, bijams turning into Atmagyan, turning into Dharma, turning into Aparavid, turning into Michigyan, false words, turning into, what did it say? Vacuous thought and empty speech. Take your pick. Hopefully you'll choose wisely and expand the mind through the teachings to know Brahman. If you just keep your mind on Brahman all the time, that's all. Can you do it? Even amidst work? Brahman will have to slip back somehow behind the work, but you can keep it present. You can keep a portion of your mind on it. Meditating upon the Ishtam, or the form of God. You can see why all of these practices are in the scriptures. We hear them all the time. Hopefully we do them all the time too. But you're talking about being aware of the formless Brahman and then taking Brahmakala, your Ishtam. Sometimes for people that's really centered more in form, like the Guru, or beings, saints and seers, and so forth. But the Ishtam or Ishvara could be and is a great centering place for the thoughts of living beings. That's where probably you get your streaming particles of living intelligence together. I actually had a dream, I just remembered. Yeah, I was thinking of it as I went to sleep. So when I sleep, I saw the three worlds, and all of the thought was there. Were just a bunch of metal particles. You see. So I said, well, if I just had a huge magnet, and I could just drop it down in the three worlds, plunk, all those filings would just come, and they'd all be focused. So that huge magnet, is Brahman. Focus your mind on that alone. That's the only reality. Believe what they tell you. Have faith in it, and do your practice, and bring all the thoughts that are beginning to get scattered together to that one place, and just live in that one place. And call it Manidvipa, the jewel island of essence where Mother lives. She's got a particular loka too, Manidvipa. If you live in Hawaii, that's a doorway to Manidvipa, I say. This is practice for her realm, the tropics, Hawaii. It's just one step away. And it's like if you pass away in Benares, then you get liberated by Shiva, right? Or Ram, or whatever, liberates you into Shiva. But if you pass away here, you get immediately into Manidvipa. That's the preciousness of the Hawaiian Islands, surrounded by 2,600 miles of water on all sides with no other land around it, and so forth and so on. So meditating on the Ishtam would be a sure factor to return your memory to you. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Chaitaneti Abhidhyate Smriti Rupena Samstita and Daya Rupena Samstita and Jnana Rupena Samstita. It goes on and on. If I sang it to you, it would take about an hour. It is, O Mother of the Universe, as compassion, you exist in the hearts and minds of all beings. O Divine Mother of the Universe, as divine memory, you exist in the hearts and minds of all beings. O Divine Mother of the Universe, as liberating wisdom, you exist in the hearts of all beings. O Divine Mother of the Universe, as devotion for Ishvara, you exist in the hearts and minds of all beings. It goes on and on like that. And priests in India chant that every day and have been doing it their whole life. I've been in India and walked by a mother temple, and I recognized those words and gone in. And they're just going on and on in Sanskrit, ringing bells, offering incense, putting food there. They do it every day. So this streaming particle of intelligence heard words coming from that streaming intelligence, and like a magnet went straight there and sat there. You exist in the hearts and minds of all beings as all these positive qualities. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Rupa Rupena Samstita. The next line, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Arupa. See, so you exist as form in the hearts and minds of all beings. Next, you exist as formlessness in the hearts and minds of all beings. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Maya Rupena Samstita. Namaste. As, O Divine Mother of the Universe, as shadow play, you exist in the hearts and minds of all beings. Shadow play, Chaya it's called. And Maya, deluding power, you exist in the hearts and minds of all beings as all those negative things too. It's beautiful. See? This is all kind of a shadow play we're engaging in. If looking at your waking, dreaming, and deep sleep state hasn't convinced you that yet, then you're probably back over here with some of these collective and cosmic barriers in your way. Get yourself a big flashlight and go back here. Scriptural study and memorization. That could easily just be the first and foremost for at least for the ordinary soul, or let's call them the ordinary devotee. It's just to read the scriptures and memorize them. It's one of the practices I've been doing with Americans for the last 35, 40 years in SRV, just getting them to read a few slokas, not just like the Gita and stop. Pick out a few, memorize them, contemplate them, manana, and put them in your memory for all times, because I saw my own teacher being able to recite the whole Bhagavad Gita by memory in his 90s, so I realized that he would take that into his next lifetime, if he had one, and that he had probably brought that forward from a previous lifetime, and just remember it real quick. Oh, that, how things come back to people's memories quickly for some in your family, others never, or hardly ever. It's a Pirate of Penzance sings. He's never Sekatsi. What never? No, never. What never? Well, hardly ever. Ever seen your American opera? Gilbert and Sullivan? We did when we were young, and they were really pretty stupid, but that aside, it reminds me of that. So maybe you won't remember things your whole lifetime, or your family members won't, but there's always a light in every family that's ushering people back to the streaming particle, or come back here, try this ride, get off of that old ride that's taking you nowhere but in circles. This goes a long way across terrain. Come with me. So that's one of the sure and fast ways. Study of scripture and its memorization. Call it swadhyaya in yoga. And it's prescribed by the seers. Observing celibacy and or moderation. So, of course, my teacher was a monk for most of his life. So when we saw this amazing memory in him, even when he got old, he never forgot things. And even when his senses were out, he'd still be talking, blind and half deaf, about Vedanta from the podium. They'd have to lead him up there so he wouldn't trip over things, stand there, and he'd just like look in there and open his mouth, and she'd pour out wisdom. So, Vivekananda had that experience too, only, of course, he only lived 39 years in his body. So we saw the obvious appearance of resilient memory, is a good way of putting it, in those who were moderate or celibate. And so we started practicing that in the West. I think I'll observe a period of celibacy. And I'll think of it in terms of silence, of indrawn practices, of not letting my senses run out. All the teachings of yoga had to be there. The preliminary limbs, the controlling your senses and so forth. And we took it as a great challenge. And then we met people, like I met Lexixon, and they were also engaged in that. And if it wasn't absolute celibacy of the monks, you had the moderation of the yogic householders, and how careful they were with their energy to sublimate it and take it in. And the world with the vacuous thoughts and empty speech, all within the first 30 years of their life, expending it all. And, turning listless and weak and losing their memory, and nothing important retained toward the end of their life. So fear comes, doubt comes, various things. So that's an important factor to add into this whole look at things, how to reserve your energy and keep it and sublimate it. I think if you store it up is one thing, but to sublimate it is the next step. Because there are, of course, cases of monks who store up their celibacy, their power, and they don't amount to much. So we can't just limit it to that one thing. It's got to be in combination of a few other things here that have to do with divine memory, Daivishmrita. And definitely a warning against Vismriti, but just Smriti itself, memory, is very good for a person who is seeking enlightenment through a series of lifetimes. Keeping holy company after initiation is important. So you can read books, you can practice moderation, and get your initiation, and then you go away? Or do you value your teacher, like I did Swami Sheshananda? I never burnt any bridges. I wasn't there to do that. I heard the truth, which I'd already recognized in my 20s, and I'd got them from books, because I read the Gita and the Vivekachudamani and before I met him. And it was like Mother was saying, here, remember these, because you're going to meet a great soul. So here's what you're going to want to know again in this lifetime before you meet him. So this will mohamutkara, hammer away at anything you brought through the curtain of nescience in your young Western life, born with earthly parents, that isn't supposed to be there, or is a blockage to your deeper understanding. Is keeping you from enlightenment in this very life, which is keeping you from developing a healthy thirst for freedom or formlessness. Otherwise, it's fear of formlessness that's in you, and belief in death. Those two go together. So, a path isn't just a few years and done. And it's for life. And the best way to keep yourself constant throughout is to take refuge. And taking refuge in the Guru is good, but we see that happening. It doesn't always work. You see, if you can find one wisdom ray from the Divine Mother of the universe that stuns 1,000 scholars, then maybe you'll have a chance at staying constant amidst all of this, and amidst many lifetimes of coming and going, if that's still what you're doing, if you still have a thirst for life. Because this thirst for life, forever quench, it drags from birth to death the soul, and death to birth the soul. He conquers all who conquers self. Know this and never yield. So that's that abhaya. You see. Utilize japa of the mantra continually. That's probably both a very good advice and a fail-safe. I've seen people, Americans, who have gone away from the path after taking it. And all I can say to them, if I see them later, or sometimes they say it to me, is that I still practice the mantra you gave me. So that's a good step. In fact, even Holy Mother said that. What I had to give you, I gave you at the time of initiation. That's the most important thing, the mantra. And I think that's not just because you're enlightened when you get it. It's a practice. You have to do it. She says it's as hard as digging in the dry earth with a spade to do mantra, to keep it fresh, to keep it living, to infuse it with living particles of intelligence. That's difficult to do over time. It's too boring for us today. But that's what you do in thick and thin. And by doing that continually, then it begins to wear away at that curtain of nescience. It begins to thicken your armor and sharpen your intellect so you can penetrate through things at will, which is the ideal. You have to be able to depend upon your true self, your true nature, to take you through those trials. Who knows when your guru might not be there helping you anymore, on the outside anyway. So utilize japa of the mantra continually. I think it's both a good advice and a concession to people, maybe who can't or won't do a lot of these other practices. I mean, it's basically kind of a 4 yoga. You could look at this and see that. And then practice the 5 types of sacrifice. I think that's where karma yoga and service kicks in. We were talking just about that today. Some paths today we see are 2 yoga paths. They prescribe meditation and action. So they want you to meditate, usually those schools, on formlessness. They don't have an ishtam, so strike that out of there as an advantage, according to your temperament, of course. But then they also want you to do seva and serve. So if you meditate and do service, then going back and forth between these 2 very contrasting, opposite yogic practices, that's the way that you make spiritual progress. It's the way the water mill will turn and help you. You'll at least make some spiritual progress in this life. But so if you can increase the menu here and work on all 4 yogas simultaneously, maybe there'll be periods where you'll be more into one, but don't forget the other 3, and so forth and so on. Then you'll have this expansive, you'll be able to expand the mind to know Brahman in all ways, and that opens more avenues to the streaming particles of living intelligence and helps them enter you. You want this to infuse you, strike you, enter into you, penetrate you. And the more open you are to that, the more avenues, the more nadis you have open to that, the more you'll escape body-bound souls and animal births. I mean, because if Krishna says that there are many wombs to be born in, Arjuna, evil wombs too, he goes on, and rajasic wombs, restless wombs. So it's usually like attracts like there in many cases, not all cases, but tamasic beings are born with tamasic parents, restless beings born with restless parents, balanced people born with balanced parents. It is that the mango doesn't fall, the fruit doesn't fall that far from the tree in many cases. And so that's a good thing for people who are seeking equipoise, balance, peace, success in dharmic life, with dharma first, and then kama and artha later, or along the way after you've got dharma established. The four fruits of life teaching, then it's very important for that. So if you look at these 7 practices to reclaim your divine memory, and then it's something to hear and start practicing now if you haven't already started, and then to keep it up, fortify yourself, and open yourself to these higher particles. In our remaining time, we can read these beautiful words of Swami Vivekananda in one of his letters he wrote. New Thought is telling us to give up our dreams of dualism, of good and evil in essence, and the still wilder dreams of suppression. New Thought teaches us that higher direction and not destruction is the law. It stops short of nothing but acceptance. It teaches that no situation is hopeless, and as such accepts every form of mental, moral, and spiritual thought where it already stands, without a word of condemnation, and tells it that so far it has done good, but now is the time to do better. What in old times was thought of as the elimination of bad, New Thought teaches now as the transfiguration of evil and the doing of better. It above all teaches that the kingdom of heaven is already in existence, if we will have it, and that perfection is already in mankind, if he will but see it. Those are words from Streaming Particles of Living Intelligence. Swamiji himself was the head meteor of that stream of particles and great souls. 15 of them immediately come to mind. Brahmanandam, Shivam, Shantam, Premanarupam, Niranjidam, Yogisham, Adbhutam, Nicham, Akhandadvaita Lakshanam, Vijnanam, Trigunatita, Turya Beta, Samgitam, Subodham, Sharadam, Chaiva, Viveka, Shashi Bhushanam, Shashi, Ramakrishnananda, Samanvaya Mahacharya, Yuga Dharma Swarupinam, Sarvadeva Swarupam, Sri Ramakrishna Namamyaham. So that was the most powerful stream of anything we've seen for hundreds of years, if not millennia, straight from the heart of Mother Kali to make her appearance. Give me 12, even 12 of such lion-hearted souls, he said, and I will transform the world. Om Tatsnayo, Om Tatsnayo, Ravrendi Mahe, Gatung Yagyaya, Gatung Ye Nupataye, Daivi Swastarastu Naha, Swastir Manusevyaha, Urdvam Jigatu Bhesajam, Sangno Astu Dvipade Sangchatushpate, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Come, let us make a humble offering of the small self into the great self. May we always delight in this offering, always revere the Lord and the Mother of all sacrifices. May divine blessings be upon us. May peace come into the entire human race. May healing, well-being, and prosperity then also abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.